right. Welcome to the Real Talk Cybersecurity Podcast. Today, me and Mr. Des, we got a great topic, right, Des? We're talking AI and cybersecurity and CloudBot, Moodbot, Cloakbot, whatever it's called. So today we'll be talking about that and maybe some other cool stuff as well. Des, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
I'm good, man. I'm perplexed because I'm watching all these podcasters using this. Do they call it CloudBot now? What do they call it?
Yeah, Claude Code Security.
Or, Mootbot or Moltbot or whatever. And dude, they're doing all this crazy shit, man. Like they're having it manage their whole marketing campaign and they're having it, manage all their emails. Now I'm emailing people. I don't even know if I'm emailing Moltbot or emailing them, but in the back of my head, I'm thinking, man, there's no way this is secure. It's like, who's this data going to,
Yeah.
Have you been seeing any of this stuff?
When you start talking about AI specifically, there's a component of data governance that if you didn't have it, solidified when you were running, let's say, manual processes, or you were just running with software, it increases the complexity by which you have to manage it today, right? Not impossible, but it's one of those things where you have to take the extra step. It's unfortunately one of those things I think that the industry is finding out is that there was a maturity gap to start, and AI is intensifying that gap because now you see these gaps way faster. And now it's just top of mind, right? Everyone was accustomed to doing business a particular way over the last, let's call it 10, 15, 20 years. And now you're watching business change right before your eyes, right?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because, at first glance, when I see this stuff, like I just want to go all in, and I want to give it access to everything because it does so many different things and it needs the context. But then on the other side, I'm sure there's like a lot of cybersecurity concerns around all these different elements. When it comes to our cybersecurity leaders living in this environment where I'm sure CEOs are coming to them saying, hey, we need to do AI. And they're thinking, what? And they're saying, we need to do more AI. I mean, as a cybersecurity leader, as an IT leader, how can you put in place a proper context so that AI can flourish within inside of your organization?
That's a really good question, man. To be honest with you, the first step is to accept that it's here. That's the first step. Just accept that it's here, accept that the conversation is going to happen, accept that you're going to have to implement something, right? I think that we then have to start thinking about guardrails versus gates, right? I think right now everyone their knee-jerk reaction is, yo, we don't understand this fully, so let's put up gates. Let's make it very difficult to kind of work with it, but at least then we have proper controls on all these other things. And what they're doing is they are hurting the efficiency of what you can accomplish with AI, but then also at the same time, they are not placing the proper governance parameters around it. I can just set up a control and say, don't do this, right? And I can stop it from happening. But the real question is it actually being deployed in a way that's helping the business accomplish what its end goal is, right? And based on how the business wants to use AI, tells me how I need to go forth and how I need to secure it, how I need to deploy it, how I need to manage it. Now, here's the insightful component I think it is. A lot of, let's say, executives just in general, they're thinking about this thing called AI, right? But they don't necessarily know where it's going to fall into their environment. This is where the role of the technologist has increased in an organization because now you have the ability to inform the business on various ways that they can understand and various ways that they can push forward using AI. That means the technologist has to be more versed of business and the business has to be more versed of technology. I actually think AI is a great unifier in that regard. Now, to the point that I think that you just brought up as far as how do you make sure that you are deploying it correctly, making sure that it's secure and all those other things, I think that you have to think about the place that it operates in your environment. What is it going to be doing? And then you need to deploy controls according to that. If you know you're going to be sloshing data from here to there to there, then you need to make sure that you have proper DLP controls, right? Data loss prevention controls, which most of the time you can set up just organically. And most companies, I would hope, already have some form of DLP set up anyway. But if you use Copilot, for example, Microsoft Preview or Purview already comes with DLP configurations and other things like that that you can just deploy into your environment. And it's all within the same ecosystem, for example, right? So those are like small things that you can do. And the largest thing is actually creating policy around it, actually creating technical requirements around it. And then from there, ensuring that, again, you have guardrails and not gates.
Yeah, for sure. Dude, can you give me feedback on something? Because
Sure, let's do it.
naturally, I was thinking, I use so much AI every day that, I've seen, firsthand the operational improvements. And it's not just necessarily in doing things, but it's in thinking strategically.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of in my head, the IT leader for our company was building his vision out and he was designing his vision. And, I added a step or an element, which is where I at first wanted to say, hey, I'm going to make this guy responsible for making sure everyone's using AI, which I obviously took a step back on because I realized, well, wait a minute. He's an IT leader. He
Yeah.
can't go to the head of, sales and say, hey, you got to start using AI or else. So what I ultimately came to the conclusion on was that the best way to create this was, hey, you're responsible for creating the business context so that when an IT or when someone in our company wants to use AI, they can start using it within a couple minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, and that involves obviously everything you discussed, proper governance, proper tool set, proper everything. And so I'm a little curious, like your insight and feedback on that thought process and if we're taking the right approach.
I think that's interesting. So on one side, I say yes, right? You want the business to define out what their use case for AI is. That's number one, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how you're going to get the best use of it. Now, there is a gap that we also have to figure out too, and that is, does the person that's engaged on the business side fully understand all of the capabilities, all of the functionality,
That's true.
all of the things that they can do? So in that regard, that's why I say it's like this joint partnership between the business and technology, as far as, hey, bring me your biggest pain points. This is how I typically go about these conversations, especially from a product perspective. You go to someone and you say, hey, what is your biggest pain points? Where do you think, and whatever, and that can mean anything, right? From a business perspective, that could be, hey, this is where leads fall through. It's hard to follow up on this. Hey, this is where we're leaking revenue, whatever that might look like. We lose so much time doing this thing, right? You go to the technologist and say, this is what my requirements are. This is my problem. This is the requirements that I need to have. Then
Yeah.
it's on the technologist, under the guise of the overall governance of the organization, right? To say, all right, cool. Here's the solution I can put in front of you. Here's the use cases that you can work through. And then they can start to work through that actual problem. And they can then implement it, right? And once it's implemented, then you do user testing, and then you can get an idea of whether or not this is sufficient or not, right? And that's just a process that's birthed out of that overall governance.
Now, for like IT leaders, like your standard director of IT, this is kind of out of scope for them, right? Like we're talking a
I just
technologist being like a CTO or
don't think that it's out of scope. I think that,
really.
yes, because, and here's the reason why. So from a product perspective, yeah, you could say in a typical CTO. But when you start thinking about it, and it depends on the organization, right? Most IT directors in, like, let's say a smaller business or a small, medium-sized business, they might wear the hat of CTO, CIO, and CISO, right?
Yeah, true.
So in that context, that person is all things to all men, right? You could say, so to
Yeah.
speak. Now, I do think even in a larger organization, it's a joint partnership still between those three, right? Let's say you go between the CTO, CIO, and CISO. That joint partnership still has to exist. They have to walk as three men with one voice, in a way, right? and once they go into the room and they have the conversations with the business, which would be, you know what I mean, the other executive, the CFO, the CEO, the chief strategy officer, whoever, right? That's the conversation that they're going to need to have. Because number one, I think that AI not only is going to change application security and how we deploy applications long term and the security of those apps, I think that the way that we're starting to see everyone migrate over into the cloud, I think infrastructure is going to be similarly
Yeah.
impacted by AI, right? Because as you start moving over into the cloud and you start being able to do, automated, standing up things with Terraform and other things like that, AI is going to become huge in regards to that. Because things that people used to do in council, they have the ability to script out. And that in and of itself is going to change the way infrastructure is going to be managed going forward. Then you start bringing in your security leadership team that's going to also make sure that we have all of the appropriate guardrails around, whether it be application or infrastructure, right? In conjunction to ensuring that business processes are operating securely. But most business processes in 2026 are being completed by, the underlying tier zero infrastructure and by the applications that sit on top of it, right? So most business processes, you have some manual stuff that could float around, generally are being handled in under the guise of technology, right? And so that's where you're going to start to see that really start to peel together or pull together, and you're going to start to see that become super critical for organizations going forward to actually get the best use out of what they're trying to accomplish.
Now, is it so like to me, like from my perspective, I'm kind of thinking like all business leaders and department leaders, like they should be taking, like they're ultimately responsible for accomplishing their desired outcome. And so from my perspective too, like I think there is an element where there needs to be some responsibility of finding the best solution for specific problems on those leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Now the head of IT can make it happen, but my thought process is like, if I were to go to my head of IT and say, hey, go put AI in my organization, in many senses, I don't know if I would give him that responsibility. I think I would go to my business leaders and I would say, hey, you guys, AI is here and like it could probably take 80% of your tasks. Like I want you to start thinking through and leveraging AI whenever you create a new process or to put that responsibility on the business leaders. So my director of IT isn't, run into, people saying like, you gotta do more AI, and trying to enroll them in that. You know what I'm saying?
Well, let me ask you a question, Jake, because I think this is a very interesting perspective. So, number one, I agree with you on putting the onus on the business, right? And the
Yeah, for
reason
sure.
I say that is for this perspective in and of itself. There might be use cases where leveraging AI might not make sense. What
Yeah,
if by actually taking the step of implementing AI to take care of such or said task, right? What if it increases time? What
for
if
sure
it's
can.
inefficient, right? Right. Like, what if it's inefficient at doing that which a human is much more equipped to do, right? That's why I say I
100%.
agree with the philosophy there, because being able to take a human being and put them in the process, right, to be able to make the determination on what makes sense or not is the right answer when I'm the person responsible and accountable for ensuring the task gets done. IT is there, like I said, to help implement said vision and to
Exactly.
make sure that the vision is, secure. But strategy of how we do it always has to come from the business, because the business
Exactly.
drives everything that we do. Everything on the technology side is always going to be, supportive to the end goal and end strategy of the business, as we've said probably 1,000 times here now.
Yeah. Because I mean, at the end of the day, leaders own their process. They own their outcomes. I mean, how they achieve it is how they achieve it. And AI may be one of the solutions to accomplish that. From the IT perspective, all, our IT leaders can do is they can say, hey, to set these guys up for success, given that AI may be a frequently used part of the strategy, like, hey, I got to make it as easily accessible to them as possible. So like, what does it look like? Tools to use, governance, policies, procedures, etc.
Yeah.
Um, so so now here's another question, Des, because I think that there's a lot of IT leaders out there who are accountable for making their own processes, more efficient, more effective, more towards getting to their desired outcome. And I'm sure they're asking themselves the question of, hey, if I want to start putting AI into my processes and procedures and all those elements, where do I start and what do I do? And what have been effective practices, what have been ineffective practices that you've seen with AI in IT in the last 6 months?
Good question. So, number one, the biggest mistake people make typically is thinking that AI is their savior, meaning that AI is going to solve all issues, right? We've seen it more recently with a lot of the big tech companies that got rid of software engineers, and then you look at it, and a lot of them have to hire them back, right? Because what they thought they were going to get out of AI, they weren't fully able to get out of it. The thing is, number one, you have to change and you have to fix your philosophy and your premise on what AI is going to do, right? AI is going to make great people better. It's going to make good people great. But I always say the average and below average will not be enhanced because they likely won't execute on it. Right? That's just the reality. Because the reason that you sit into that stage, so to speak, is because typically you're not utilizing, it's not usually because of intelligence necessarily. It's usually because you're not utilizing all the tools at your disposal. Right.
Yeah.
So that would be the number one thing I would say is understand the right use case and where does it play in conjunction with other people. Right. From there, though, I think that the opportunity for fine tuning things and allowing it to be a combat multiplier or force multiplier for your staff is going to be huge. That you think about it. If we wear dual hats, if you are in a small, medium sized business and you wear a dual hat, you now are responsible for drafting policies. Well, guess who can draft policies? Probably better than you, right? You know what I mean? You prompt it out, like you can get the right answer. If you have to do presentations, right? Like those are two use cases in and of itself. If you're trying to figure out how to solve a technical issue, right, and start to troubleshoot, right then and there, AI is going to be more effective than every Google search that you did before, right? The laughing thing, the joke used to be this. It used to be, yo, listen, when you don't know, you just go to Google, right? Like that used to be what it is. You're a technologist, you Googled everything. You're like, I don't know how to do this. Google, boom, right? And then you'll find, articles on things. You'll go to Reddit, and then you'll go to, GitHub, and you'll see some articles. You'll play around all this. You're in, Discord and Slack channels, asking people how they solve this, right? That's typically how it would work. Now we're in the days where those things are viable for your people-to-people interaction, but just solving the problem, you can use AI to do that, right? And so what's going to happen is teams that people would have liked to have 10, they'll be able to do that with the 4 people that they do have, if they utilize it correctly. So I think a lot of those gaps that we've historically seen, they are going to see those opportunities if you put it in the hands of people and you really promote them and encourage them to be able to do it. Gaps and skills that people used to have, it's easier to fill those skills and those skill gaps now because they have a tool beside them that's going to be able to set them up to be able to point them in the right direction. And now they can use their own intuition, their own creativity, something that AI does not have, to be able to fully solve that problem. So if I was a technologist and I'm leading various IT teams, technology teams, security teams, that's where I'm placing it. I'm placing it on the strategy side. I'm placing it on the, junior level, the junior task level, right? To get me outputs that I need. And then from there, I'm able to critically think and solve all of the rest of the issues the way I have been. But instead of it taking me 3 hours, it should take me 10 minutes.
So I think one of the big frustrations, especially leaders that have already been enrolled in the possibility of AI and they've seen the benefits of what it can accomplish and what it can do. I think a very common frustration for those individuals is when they look at their team and they're like, Earl, the network administrator who's been here for 20 years, he's been doing the same thing the same way for 20 years. How do I get him to start seeing the opportunity inside of AI? I mean, how do I enroll my team in seeing this opportunity? Have you run into that at all out there? And have you seen any practices that have worked?
Yeah, I've seen it where people have completely said, hey, they don't believe in it, they're done, they're not using it, right? I think that's a huge mistake. So I'll start with the people that's already given up before it really started. We're already halfway in the game and they've already threw their hands up, right? But then there's another component of people that I think are rightly skeptical because right now, let's just be honest, right? It's a huge buzz, right? You throw AI on it, oh my gosh, it's like the greatest thing that's ever been created. Whether or not that's more effective and more efficient, we don't know, right? That's the thing because that's so process dominant, that's so application dominant, that's so like it's very specific, right? As to whether
Yeah.
or not AI solves that problem or not. You don't know until you have it, right? And everyone's offering that. So the biggest way I've seen that you're able to enroll people into becoming believers of leveraging the technology is by having successful use cases, just like with
Yeah.
everything else, right? When I can see an output of something that you create and you use AI to create it, that gets me excited about AI, right? It gets me excited when I go into it not knowing that it's AI and then I figured out that it was AI that did it. Whoa, right? And then and that's where I've seen people become super excited about it. When you've accomplished a task way faster, when you've built something and you're like, yo, I was able to get 70% of it by just doing X, Y, and Z, right? And leveraging this. Or, hey, I was able to build this by doing that. Those are the things that get people excited. It's going to be the real use cases that people see. In legacy businesses with legacy technology, you're not going to see a lot of that, right? Because unfortunately, and this is one of the issues, and this is, I think, a larger conversation that we have to talk about, is there's innovation that's going on from a technological perspective, and you're either going to get in the game or you're not. If you decide not to get in the game, then you are going to watch those who historically have been deemed not by nature of ability or capability, but by nature of just from a status perspective, how we've set it up. You're going to see businesses that historically were inferior that's going to become superior because they leverage the technology and they can do more with less. I am of the belief that we are going to start to see 5 people companies become billion-dollar companies because of AI. That's my philosophy on it because I think that they'll be able to build repeatable processes. They'll be able to build systems, all the things that most businesses typically struggle with, right? Because no one actually knows how to do it or leadership is in the way in some way, shape, or form. Um, if you get 5 people that are AI driven, that are super excited, that see the future of where business is going, and they can go to market with that, I mean, at that point, that efficiency with the partnerships that they could have down the supply chain, I think that you have an opportunity to really scale up business because everything that you do, if you do it from a secure perspective, right? If you do all of those things and it's all engineered together at the foundation, then there's a lot of cost on the back end that you will not incur because you set it up the right way. And then from there, and here's another thing, and I think this is another component of it. We talk about AI, right? But then there's so many tools now to build additional automation and other things along those lines too. That's also going to add those efficiencies. So I think if you leverage the new technology as it rolls out now, then businesses have the opportunity to really scale up. And if you're an IT leader, then you have the opportunity to really scale up your team to get more functionality, to get more capability, and to be able to create something that's very valuable to your overall team.
Dude, I think you said something that can literally help every IT leader be like 10x more efficiency, have 10x more efficiency, which is in your organization or in your department, right? You may not be able to control the organization. Maybe you can, but I see 2 huge opportunities that would be that I'm like just thinking in the back of my head is I kind of want my IT leader to do this. I'll see if he's down. But the first is sharing weekly stories of leveraging AI and the outcome. So every single person in the organization can see some of the benefits that different individuals are getting by using AI. And I mean, you could start and do a test case just with your team and do like a weekly sharing of, because if you have 2 network administrators, right? And one hears that the other one did a task in 30 minutes that he's doing. I mean, in 2 seconds, he's going to say, whoa, 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 hold on, let me see this.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that slows down AI inside of a culture is people are just not sharing the benefits. And so I thought that was one really powerful thing you said. And I'm thinking about my organization and saying, wow, it would be great if we had some sort of a setup where we were sharing weekly stories so we could enroll people in the benefits of AI. And so they could start looking at their day-to-day and seeing where they could use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, another thing that I think is pretty significant as well is I also think that in some senses, a lot of people approach, as we've seen time and time again, is I do think people approach these problems from the perspective of solution first. And so this is kind of a separate conversation, but I do think there is like a huge risk where really make sure that you're staying vision based, you're staying anchored in the vision, and then you go to AI versus going to AI and then the vision. Because what you're going to do is you're just going to be finding efficient ways of doing things that aren't helping you with your end goal.
I agree.
And that's a random tidbit that I'm throwing in.
No, and I think that, Jake, what you said is super important because I think that's just we have to see AI as a tool. Yeah. If you see it as a tool, then what you said completely makes sense because I should come with the end strategy in mind of what I'm trying to accomplish. I should have my 5-year vision of what this looks like. Right? I should have all this stuff. AI is a tool that helps me start to figure out, all right, cool. How can I build this? How can I get there more efficiently? How can I automate things? What things can I automate? What people do I need? What skill sets do I need? And then from there, you have the opportunity to kind of throw out a lot of those ideas. And hey, there's an idea that might make a lot of sense. There's a lot of things that might make sense in your head, but once you start putting it down, you start going through the logical conclusions that are going to be deduced from the models themselves. Then you start understanding like, okay, there's some flaws there. It doesn't mean I don't do it, but it means that I have to solve for those gaps now, right? Because I see where the gaps are in my logic. A lot of times when people, don't understand, like, all right, A plus B gets me to C, right? And they go from A to C just by nature of the way their brain works, they lose a lot of that context. And I think AI is huge in being able to fill in some of those gaps too. And I agree with you 100%. Know what the end game is in mind, and then use AI as a tool to help you get there more efficiently.
I think it would be my dream. And, IT leaders are constantly asking themselves, hey, how do I become a CIO? How do I become a leader of IT? And every now and then I see these opportunities of, hey, if my IT leader came to me and did this, I would love them and want to give them more responsibility. I think based on our conversation today, I see a huge opportunity for IT leaders to not just implement AI in their own departments and become super efficient, but there's another opportunity to share those achievements throughout the entire organization and get your CEO bought into it as well and say, hey, I don't want to just build a AI culture within my department. I want to help you build an AI culture through your whole org. And I think there's an opportunity that just by sharing stories every single week of within the organization of people leveraging AI, you're just naturally going to up level the whole organization because everyone's going to start becoming more interested and looking at it and using at it more, which at a scale of your department's awesome. But if you're sharing those stories with the entire organization of 1,000 people or 250 people, I mean, you talk about an IT leader making a difference. I think there's a huge difference being made right there. So,
yeah, I agree.
Good chat today, Des. That was sweet. That was some good stuff, man. That was some good stuff. Well, thank you guys for joining the Real Talk Cyber Pod. This is me and Des. We're out.
Out.
Deuces.